Hello, hello.
Hey Adam, how you doing?
Just something weird with my.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Um, so Adam came in and then got booted out again. It said that there's a problem with his microphone.
Okay. It's probably asking him to restart or something.
All right, it looks like the streams are all up.
Okay.
So I see a few people starting to join on it. Got multiple streams open, so I need to mute them all. Okay, I see a few people dialing in. Dial in. If you're dialing in, tell us where you're dialing in from. Say hi, drop a comment so we can all see.
You have to connect your YouTube account to comment?
I should be logged in. Okay, here's Adam.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we got you
I
now.
found the culprit that was hogging my camera. It's like so many things open, right? Like, why can't I get access to the camera? Come on, this is not the time. And I was just live too, so there was no problems with the camera or anything. I wanted to actually stream just to make sure everything's fine with the setup. So so I have to say.
The feeling.
We hear you.
That's probably my own doing, you know. It's always something like that.
All right, Adam, where are you dialing in from? I'm not sure where you're
Vancouver.
based. Vancouver, of course.
Vancouver,
right.
Canada.
And I see we got Andy from London, Jake from Portland. Hi, Jake.
Oh, Jake is here. Awesome. Oh man, I'm so excited for Jake. He has so much advantage over me. I started this 10 years ago. He's now starting with 10 years of work behind all this struggle. So he's going to be very successful.
A young blood. That's going to always be coming.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's actually one of our first customers on Auto.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the first 5.
That's awesome. Yeah. He's also a partner of ours. So this is all good. It's all coming together.
Happy days. And we got David from Atlanta, VJ from Cheltenham, England. Hello from England. Gio from Colombia.
Must be late in England.
It's like 10 p.m., I think.
That's not too bad.
It must be these accents Chris and I have.
Yeah, it's throwing people off. It's like, oh.
VJ is just hardcore. So why do boring things like going to bed when you could be on an event modeling webinar?
Exactly. It's exciting stuff. Yeah. Did you guys see Sonnet 3.7 yet?
We're using it. You're going to be
Yeah.
actually seeing the output of it today.
Yeah.
So,
You know what's awesome is that Cursor AI dropped it in immediately.
Yeah.
I was like, what? But it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
come up as a default. I don't know
Yeah.
where that setting is in Cursor AI to have it as a default. So
I got to get myself out of this WebStorm mentality. Like I love WebStorm. It's like
I did too.
it's like
Believe me, I was so
yeah,
dedicated to JetBrains for like over a
yeah, me
decade,
too.
like 15 years at least, starting with ReSharper back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know how they missed the boat on this. Like,
I don't know either, but like it's I can't just get myself to be left behind. So I'm going to make the switch soon. Up till now, it was all WebStorm because we needed to hit the
oh,
target
believe
for
me,
this
I
demo.
resisted quite a lot, but
Yeah.
then because of event modeling and event sourcing and just like the prescriptive nature of how a slice is done, AI was like, holy crap.
Yeah. It's like a
It
repeatable
just
process set of
shows
patterns.
how powerful the guidance is that you get from it. So even like the shitty versions of ChatGPT 3.5 or whatever, when back a
Yeah.
year and a half ago or whatever, we're already like, oh wow, this is really good because our functions are so tiny. The pure function, the way that you apply pure functions to get your business logic in place, it's so methodically simple that it already. I knew that this was the beginning. Like everyone was saying like, oh yeah, this is a limited output or whatever. It's like no. If you have your
Indeed.
shit together,
Yeah.
any automation is just going to send you through the roof. And when the automation is to this level, yeah, like we'll let everyone else make crappy solutions. They'll make a ton of 3D games in their browsers to fart around with this. And when they apply the same mentality to actual information systems that need to be responsible, we'll be there to help clean up the mess. But it's going to be a mess.
Thing.
Yeah,
we'll see. Hopefully, we're going to put a dent in that, right? Like that's what we're here to talk about today. So, we're
ready to go. Sorry,
it's all good. No, we're banking on it. Like that's fine. We're just having a little chat. We're banking on that, like that repeatability, that simplicity of event sourcing.
It's inevitable. It would be silly not to bank on it. I don't know how you would do otherwise. Yeah.
So we're doing that, and then today that's what we're going to obviously be talking about. But the pattern recognition. I mean, that's exactly where AI like thrives. But how do you make it deterministic? How do you make it so that it gives you good code out the other side? Because right now you ask for code and then it's pot luck. You might get something amazing, but you also might get something like pretty bad. So it's how do you control that? How do you get AIs to produce high quality code that ultimately meets the requirements now and continues to meet the requirements tomorrow and the day after and next week and next year, right? And it keeps growing because, leaving it just to this black box AI to go do entropy for you just doesn't fly. It won't fly.
Yeah.
So that's, we're getting ahead of ourselves, I think. We're about to give away everything like before we've even started. Sorry, Chris.
I'm just so happy to work on all this stuff. It's like all of the stuff that's happening, what you're doing, what's happening in the industry, just the attention and detail to be responsible, collaborative design. It's just I'm so happy to finally in my lifetime get back to that feeling that I had when I started in the 80s. It's wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. Man.
Awesome. Well, we're just a couple minutes past. Maybe we'll give one more minute for everyone to join in.
Yeah, I see some people coming in from Poland. So I'm Polish. I was born in Krakow in Poland, and so it's nice to see some people from. And there's also Berlin. Oh, it's Vlad. I know Vlad. Hi, Vlad. Anyway, yeah. Hi, Kat. Kat's here from Seattle.
Our team at Zolvio, the consultancy I founded, is like I want to say 80% in Poland. So
nice.
yeah. So that's
good.
Also brings the boys Polish, to the yard.
It could be bad or good.
All right.
Kat's not from Seattle. She's from Bellingham. You shouldn't be ashamed of Bellingham, Kat. Put down that you're in Bellingham. Make people realize what that is.
We'll just Google you to find out where that is.
No, Kat's awesome. She's actually from Current, Event Store DB, future version of that company. So I'm glad that she's here. That's really good. Lots of people from Poland. So okay. Well, last time I was in Krakow was 2019.
I'm going to say 20 years ago, but no,
2019. Yeah, no, but before that, it was like for 82 when I was a kid. So that was a long time, and I have cousins there and family, and so it's awesome to be back and visit.
Fantastic. Well, Sam and I are both dialing in from Marin, the north side of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a beautiful spot, but prone to power cuts, as Sam experienced just an hour ago. So we're
Fine for
running
my
on a
neighbor.
backup,
That's right.
running on a backup generator. So hopefully it's going to bless
Wow,
us.
are you serious?
I am.
You're
We
right.
lost power, and actually, it's come back since. So that we didn't know this update. But I had a line running all the way back
Well, we
there
had
to my
pretty
neighbor.
strong windstorms here. You're
Yeah.
just like a couple of states south of us.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, we got a
Big
bit
winds
of it.
here.
But you didn't get the earthquake. We had a 5.4 earthquake.
Oh shit.
There's cracks in the ceiling in the hallway.
Oh my.
Like I haven't felt an earthquake that hard ever. It just, the whole house was like, what the hell? Like a train hit the house. It was
My.
awful. No one died. Don't worry.
All right. Should we get this thing started?
Let's get it rolling.
All right. So thank you everyone for being here. We are joining two incredible forces. We've got Adam, who you'd know as the godfather of modeling, and Sam, who's very well known for automation. We're bringing those two worlds together and announcing today the new world of model automation. So just before we get into the detail, Sam, why don't you give us just a quick taster of what it is you're going to show us today so people know what to expect?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen. Give it a second to start sharing. Customary question. Do you see my screen?
And it's full glory. I
It's
just
full glory.
upgraded to an OLED monitor. I don't
Fantastic.
care about burn-in. I'll get a new one. It looks glorious.
Amazing. All right. Well, look, guys, here's an event model. Okay. And what I'm going to be showing you today is how we're going to take this event model that you see in front of you, which is from Martin's book, the Introduction to Event Sourcing. If you haven't read the book, go get the book, read it, so that you know all about this stuff, event sourcing and event modeling. And there's an example from that book that we're taking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click a few buttons without any coding whatsoever. We're just going to take this model along with if I just show you some of the specifications that are in here, things like these given when thens right here. These specifications and these descriptions on the model items. So over here we can see this is what a cart item looks like. That's it. We've defined the model, the sequence of the model, the interaction of all the events and so on. Along with all these specifications, I'm going to click deploy. And the AI is going to build all of this. And then it's going to give us an endpoint, which I will go to. And you can see right here, this is a deployed endpoint on AWS. And I can run a query and give it a second because the Lambda needs to power up. And here we go. We've got, I'm querying it and I'm getting an empty cart. And if I go add an item to the cart, and then I go query the cart again, I see the item in the cart. And if I go remove the item and I query it again, I have no items in my cart. So we're going to, oops, wrong button. We're going to show you how we can take a model like this and not only deploy it once, but make changes to it, iterate over time, and deploy that again. So none of this 0-day software crap. This is for the long haul. All right, so that's what we're going to be showing you today.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. So before we go into that in detail, just conscious there might be some folks joining us that are new to event modeling and don't know Adam. So Adam, do you want to just give us a very brief overview of who you are and what event modeling is and how you came to be its creator?
Yeah, so kind of talked a little bit before we went live with everyone that I started back in the old days when you in the 80s when literally what you were typing on the screen is the program right there. There was no, for me, formal requirements or anything like that, and all of this. And of course, as I wanted that joy of programming to be back in the industry, I definitely went through the enterprise grind and all of that. And I saw a lot of dysfunction, and it really made me not happy to work in something that I love, which was really at odds in my head. And really, it was this disconnect between business and tech. And really, when I looked back at how systems were put in place before computers, because we had systems, even though they were pen and paper, what is the accountability of how things go? That turned me on to event sourcing, where I'm like, oh, this is pretty neat. I can actually look at what happened, and that's good enough for state. In fact, it's better than state. I don't need that snapshot. Why, yes, it's convenient to look at one table, but the important things is how you got there. And we were really ignoring that in the industry for whatever reason. Some would argue that I'm not right in thinking that it was space concerns by not keeping a track record of how we got to somewhere. I think it's a combination of both. I think we got really into an echo chamber of like how computers work, and then that fell out of the academic world and all of the research labs, and then all the companies that had to be big enough to be able to afford computers. So there's a lot of these ruts in the road that set us up for a lot of bad habits. And I think a lot of those are single abstractions, simple models, just for efficiency, don't repeat yourself, all of these things. And so event modeling really came out of trying to do things in a better way. And when I started the company, I already had event sourcing under my belt, and CQRS and domain-driven design and all of these different things. Also specification by example, BDD, all of these really good things that were really setting me up for a much better way of working. But I was really still hitting my head against the kind of glass ceiling in organizations coming in as a consultant, trying to get people to adopt these things. There's really like a status quo kind of attitude where people don't want to have their cheese moved. There's a fear of risk of changing their job titles, etc. So it's really slow to move. But I really wanted to create the environment that I would like to work in, and event modeling fell out of doing everything right, at least in my opinion. Having a really good collaborative environments. Obviously event storming in Alberto's workshop format was a big influence on this. So you'll see a lot of crossover in the first step of event modeling, that we brainstorm events to make sure that we get all the concepts that are important in our organization, and then started with workflows. And then really from BDD, looking at specification by example, looking at data over time, understanding that the core of a system is really everyone, the effectiveness of knowing how information moves through a system is something that bridges the gap. Both technical and business people have to know that, right? And so that was when we saw the sweet spot of how do we have a good way to communicate how state evolves. And this is where event modeling kind of came through it. It didn't sink us deep like UML into, small nitty-gritty boxes of, showing how a class or a method works. We didn't keep it at the very high level of ad hoc requirements written by business people that, some person might have this perspective, some has this perspective. There's no like rhyme or reason why, you would specify something one way versus another at the business level. So we needed to bring that to a realistic level so that we could have developers take that and actually implement it and get what both sides want, right? So event modeling really sits there. Not too detailed, right? We don't want to be specifying implementation. We know that developers and now AI is smart enough to do that, right? And so, but we also needed to show what that level is for people that wanted to build the business to do what it needs to do. So we can't just say, okay, well, let's let AI or someone imagine how this is going to be. That's where you're going to have hallucinations, whether it's a developer hallucinating or your large language model hallucination. The problem when you have AI do it, you have only yourself to blame. When you have a developer do it, you can say, aha, you're the dummy, and then you can blame them and fire them and skirt responsibility. So this was a real kind of, event modeling is really an honest kind of place to collaborate in the middle where you can really have a back and forth. It's that meat in the sandwich between the two sides, and it's easy enough to do. It follows a story format so that anyone that's familiar with, let's say, wireframes, walking through a wireframe, set of wireframes to see how like a workflow goes. People that are familiar with that, most people are, they'll understand how a system works, but then it's taking that same idea and bringing it to a level where like, well, what about the information side of things? Like, do we have all the automations kind of shown as well? Do we have all of the nitty-gritty in terms of the information that has to be stored at certain points to show success? Do we have a place to express that? And sometimes, most often, we don't have that in just wireframes. We need to say that, sending a message on a dating site that's public, like we did for Plenty of Fish, it's not, two steps, send message, receive message. It's 12 things in between where you need to filter things and do all sorts of stuff to keep people safe and all that. And that's what event modeling does. It's really a comprehensive look at how a system works without really getting stuck in any of these details that are going to make people not want to specify things. And we learned that lesson with case tools before with UML, and how Grady Booch's UML kind of got taken away from him at UML 2.0, where it was now repurposed to be a programming language, where before it was a set of design diagrams that you could use, and they weren't supposed to be all used. But once people got a hold of it in this fashion, it became this like, oh, UML means gigantic planning where you'll never end up doing that, right? So there's dangers in that. So we've learned from history what works and what doesn't. We also have BPMN, try to satisfy all the different things that a business person could think about, and it proliferated to a ton of these symbols and branching and all that. So event modeling had, we needed something. I didn't even come up with the name event modeling. I thought we were doing event storming better, but it is its own thing. We found that out in 2018. And then from there, we see that it's a set of guidelines. And one of those things is simplicity. It has to be simple. That's why I only have 2 patterns in there, blue boxes, green boxes. Every single slice is either changing state or viewing state. And that's it, right? And as long as you keep simplicity at where it should be and not allow extra things to bubble in, you're going to go fast. You're going to have way more, things to repeat. You're going to have better numbers. That's why we do fixed costs, right? We can do fixed costs with event modeling because we have so many data points for getting what is a responsible level for a price for a slice, what is the responsible expected time for a turnaround, for a junior, for an intermediate, for a senior, for AI, right? We can throw that in there, right? I mean, we'd throw AI in as like a junior developer these days, especially when you have these really good, guide fences that we have these 2 patterns, so you can start to do that. So anyway, event modeling is really this this thing that unlocked so much, and especially things that are things that usually are subjective are now given to a process. So a lot of the management problems, and if something's worthwhile doing, you can stick fixed cost on it. You can stick something like a guarantee that I will guarantee that this will work and I'll fix any bugs for free. Like we do that. We couldn't do that without event modeling, without event sourcing. So it's really set us up for, now it's been a decade of doing this, and it's been nothing but net for tons of different projects. It's just amazing how things click together, bringing junior people on board that can incredibly quickly learn from seniors, and now to have tooling built around it to make it even faster. So that's kind of my background as to how event modeling came out. It's this responsible level of showing system design at a responsible level that everyone can use. And that's transparency, collaboration, all those things. I can't find something that's better than this. So we keep using it.
Marvelous. So, and Sam, what about you real quick? How did you get into modeling?
So once the Miro guys contacted me, and they said, "Hey, Sam, you're in the top 1% of our users. We need to meet you and see what you're doing." And the reason was because I had like hundreds of diagrams that I was just working on all the time. And I was doing that because I needed to collaborate, like large ideas. I need to communicate large ideas with people. And so when I had team members, like talking through stuff is just not enough. You need to have something where you can bring it out to the world. You can display these bigger ideas. And at first I thought I was just like good at visual stuff. Like, I'm the visual guy. But what I later discovered was that I was actually modeling, right? I was creating models to convey complex ideas with others, right? So in that sense, I've always been a modeler, just not necessarily an event modeler. But I realized the power of modeling early on is that, if a picture paints 1,000 words, well, a model has more depth to it, right? And then you can do 1,000,000 words with a model. Now, when AI became a thing around 22, I knew that models was going to be the answer to harnessing the power of AI for complex systems. Because, I might get pushback from some people here, but I think AI coding is going to take over human coding. Superhuman AI coding is already here, and it's going to be much better than humans and much faster than humans at coding. And so just like nobody develops film anymore because, digitization of the sensor, it's the same thing with code. Like nobody's going to be developing anymore in the same way as you don't develop film. Instead, we're going to be framing the pictures, like taking great photographs and setting up the equipment just so. And so we need a new digital SLR. All right, and if you look at the current digital SLRs out there, equivalent in AI, it's like the Lovable and like the Bolts and things like that. They're the instant camera. They're the one-trick pony, right? Like they'll give you one picture. Here's your Polaroid. That's it. You're done. You're good. They're really not much else beyond that, at least for the time being. Maybe they'll innovate their way out of that. But models, if you start using models, they give you so much more detail. They give you the level of detail that you need to convey these super complex, larger-than-life ideas that you need 1,000,000 words to describe software. And so knowing that, we started thinking about how do we put models on auto? And we started to look around, and we saw the event modeling team, like the teams out there, they've been doing this. They've been doing this technique of taking models into code for the past 10 years or so. And so it's like, all right, well, if this group of people have been doing it manually, like let's put them on auto.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, even if you don't have any of these tools, they're being like, this entire thing is already pushing into your world, because when I'm, even without your tooling in Cursor AI, it's getting, what I have in my diagram. I mean, I can post the given Wendens as a picture into Cursor AI and it'll give me implementation, right? It's pretty good from that. So I know that with proper guidance and not even relying on image interpretation, I can get even better. And you obviously are showing this right now.
Yeah, I'm going to show you how we can get it all in there. So you're looking at the auto interface. I'm going to start with just an intro first. And Adam, I figured we can just describe what event modeling looks like to just very briefly, visually. All right. So if I just go over here and I can create a new event model, we actually have different types of models. Event modeling is not the only one, but I'm going to start today with event modeling. And we'll just open this up right here. Let me just reload that real quick. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an event model here, open it up. And here we have a state change. So what does a state change consist of, Adam?
Well, but for an example, if you have a registration form, you can have some fields like your name and your email, and then you have a submit form, submit button, and that creates a command saying that, hey, here's something I want to do. I want to register, and here's the info for that registration. The system can reject it or accept it. If it accepts it, no one else with that email is there. It ends up with an event, and you get a yellow or an orange sticky, depending on your preference. So the reason I have yellow is because it's the easiest color to find in the store, thanks to Alberto buying out all of the orange stickies, but they're free when they're digital. So anyway, so yeah, that's about it. I mean, that's the core state change right there. That pattern is, here's a registration form. I click a button, and then this information is now stored in the system, and we put that on the timeline. So this is correct. Yeah.
There it is, right? So we have a registration form. You can submit the form. It has some details associated with it. And then you can get a form submitted event, which then becomes and has the data, right? So that's a very simple form. Now let's see what happens when I want to display that form. So if I just go over here, I add, and I can say, well, we're going to do a state view.
We kind of want to, don't we want a congratulations page, like you successfully,
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Let's do it exactly. So I'll just do a free form one right here, which basically gives us the ability to do like, form submitted. Right, so this becomes effectively just a navigation, right? Like we don't have to.
Yeah, it would be like I usually have like a congratulations page, like, hey, you did it successfully. Click here to continue or whatever. Be friendly, right? UX, UI. So I failed to mention like part of the reason that event modeling is its own thing is that user experience, the UI aspect, is always missing out of system design. And why do we have systems? To serve humans. And so event modeling has a big differentiator, is that it sees the user experience, even down to the sysadmin level, as a clear, important goal of these things. All of these things are made for humans.
So if I now then go and do a state view, like let's have an example here. What's a state view of this form that I might display?
Well, it would be all registrations. So it would be maybe a registered users table.
Registered users. Oh, sorry, that would be the registered users over here, the state.
Yeah.
Right, and then someone over here is going to be able to view it. So I might just basically add.
Well, it would be that congratulations page. It would probably pull in, you've registered, and this is the information you used. Like,
right.
Thank you so much. Right. I usually sit back what they registered with, just in case they want to hit the back button, or like, oh, I misspelled my name or something.
Yeah. So this could be like, the user specific details right there, and we can say that this actually feeds this screen right here.
That's correct. Yeah, that's what I was after. Yeah, and it actually links to that same event. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then I like to do these in green just to show like the information flow like that. So then if I do this over here and say that's an information flow of, and we'll probably automate all of this so it knows. But like you can see here that the flow of information is that the user submits a form, the form is submitted, and this can basically feed two events. One which can feed the user back the information of their details that they entered, but also an administrator might actually see a list of all users.
Yeah,
right? And so all of these events
filter, you would use the same. You could use the same view, or you could use a different view. I prefer to duplicate them. So, like you're doing, have a different state view for the end users, and a different one for the administrators. And a good example of that would be maybe expressing some of the IDs that the system may generate for the sysadmin, whereas that's not important for the user. It would just confuse them.
There we go. So that's something like user registration. We've showed like what state change, state view, and a navigation. I mean, technically, this is no longer a state change. This is now a state view because it's actually viewing state. So then we can add also automations, and we can add translation. Now, for the subject of today, we're not going to get into those, but just to highlight that these are things that we can do.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, in the original article, I did have like 4 patterns, but since I've tried to reduce them, but yeah, you will have I don't call them patterns anymore. I call them templates for things. So there's a template for getting an external system in, or talking the other way to an external system for a payment, for example. Those are more like templates of how you use the two core concepts of either blue or green. Either you're changing state or you're viewing information, you're getting state or info about state.
So you might get something like this, where it's an external event, and then you end up translating it into an internal event by way of a translator. And so that just basically this is the flow right there, right? And then if you wanted to have an automation, was saying, okay, well, given a bunch of state that happens, I'm going to create some kind of to-do list over here.
Which you hit the nail on the head. So the to-do list is a secret weapon of event modeling, because it encapsulates so many different abstractions for automation. But guess what? Everyone understands what a to-do list is, and it just unlocks so much simplicity for everyone.
And it has this little this tricky, like not tricky, but like this nifty little feedback loop over here, and I can't draw lines, that basically says, okay, I'm just going to do a to-do list, and it's going to process the to-do items, and then over time, like after a while.
If you want to be more descriptive, you can have a second green box in that same section.
Okay, cool.
To basically show how that changes it, like. Because you might have maybe just a simple Boolean that this was done and it's a checkbox, but you might have something more complex where it might actually write like the time that it was done at, or some other confirmation number for payment. That's better than a checkbox that something was done. So I usually try not to have backwards pointing arrows, but in this case, if you want to, I see a lot of people doing this shortcut when it's something dumb. They just don't want to bother adding extra stuff. But for the other times, I do actually show another instance of that same green box, and then I show what you actually changed in the data. And of course, you can bubble that down as well underneath, which we'll get to eventually, right?
Indeed. Absolutely, exactly. So that's what I wanted to do, a fly over here, so you can see like what a model looks like. And basically with these 4, like you said, these 2 patterns actually, and then these extra sort of 2.2 patterns, if you like, what you can do is describe pretty much any complex line of business application out there. Like you should be able to solve any enterprise problem using these building blocks.
Yeah, that's the whole argument, is that we've been overcomplicating systems such as insurance companies and point of sale systems and all that. How many times are going to be solving the same automation over and over again, every time treating it like a brand new piece of art? That's not where you get value. You get value about predictability and having a known way of doing things. So information systems really are just punting the ball along one step at a time forward. And it's really should be really simple, but we certainly are good at overcomplicating things.
Exactly. Now we're going to fix that. So here what we've got is a specification. Now, in fact, we've got this little editor over here that allows us to pull in the events that we created right there. And then what I can do is I can say dot, and it's pulling in the fields that I put in there, right? So I can say equals, John Doe. Now notice something here, like it didn't actually just create the fields, but what it's done is behind the scenes, it's actually already created a schema for us, and it infers the data type. So if I just do something like even incomplete here, like, age, and then I just say, 12.23, because that's what I want. And I go to the schema, and you can see it already infers that that's an age float. So it's just stuff that, you don't really care about.
Tedious before, and I think it also distracted people in event modeling, because I saw a whole bunch of people always get to that, put on the enterprise architect hat, and let's get a schema described for how these events are going to be kind of used. So everyone must have this dictionary. It's like, you first at least have to know your information flow, and then let the information flow and your user experience dictate what you need. And so now that you've had, push this off to be automatically generated and adjusted if your flow changes, that's great. So that's one less thing that I see getting in the way of getting these things out there.
Same with the given when thens. They need to be congruent. Like they need to be congruent with the commands and the events that you created. So that's why we've got this autocomplete that kicks it in. So when I say here, when, it's going to pull in my commands. Okay, when submit, and I'm going to say, okay, my name is, well, so actually I don't care about this here. The given is actually nothing. I don't need it. But what I do need is just when I submit a form, then form submitted with John Doe. So basically I just copy these details here. And like, it seems redundant, but like, that's actually the simplicity of it, isn't it? It's like when this happens, I'm allowing it. So this is basically a permissive rule. It just says this is allowed to happen. Now, for some reason, we wanted to say, if I repeat that scenario here and I can say, well, actually you have to be 18. So if this is, 18.0, they're allowed, then form submitted, right? But if, therefore I can say here, like, must be over 18, then I would define a rule over here that says, well, then, form error. I'm just going to represent this as an event right now.
That's valid too. I mean, a lot
absolutely.
of times when it's an important failure, you do want to log them, and you just have to be wary that it's not part of automation or a way for people to abuse it and fill up your event store with excessive errors.
Exactly. So then I go like that, and I go form error, and then basically I would model that. All right. So you get the picture. You got this event, this given when then editor that can help us create these things, and also behind the scenes, what it's doing is actually creating the complex JSON that you would need for a given when then. But again, we don't want anyone to worry about that. Like you should just worry about the task at hand, which is write the specs, write the data, and carry on.
And AI is incredibly good at one of the things that surprised me about AI is that when I made a JSON version of a timeline with a bunch of given when thens, because like you see behind me, we have them kind of staggered, and you build up a history of previous events, and you keep testing how the view changes with each event added. That convention was actually incredibly quickly picked up by AI, and I think there's a parallel thing that we have to address here at this point. The fact that an event model is a storyline and it adds one step at a time, guess how large language models work? They add one, they predict the next word. Here we're predicting the next step. It's almost made for AI.
Time-based modeling.
To work, it's incredible. Right?
That's right. So I'll just go over a couple of things here that we have. Just one other feature, like let's say these are the user-facing ones. So what I can do here is I can add a label. So I can manage a label, and I can say create new label, and this is like user-facing, let's say. Or maybe it's in dev actually is what I might want to say, and I'll say like that's blue or purple because in dev, and I'll save that. And now what I can do is I can apply this label and say this one's in dev, and then I can filter, and I can say filter by label, and let me just see the ones that are in dev, and then we can filter out anything that's not there.
So that's kind of what we do, like in the event model behind me. We do it manually, which takes too much time. But it's just one of those things. And I think other people have written, obviously Martin's written some things for Miro, but it's really fighting against the tool, the fact that you made this baked in by default.
Exactly. That's it. Thank you. All right. So that's basically Event Modeling 101. If you want to find out more, speaking of Martin, please go read the book. It is amazing. It is super informative. He's put a lot of hard work into it. And he's very active on the Discord as well. Just a super friendly chap. So make sure you go read.
This is the book. Get a hard copy on that. And I was lucky enough to get it autographed. So thank you, Martin.
Amazing. I'm gonna have to follow suit on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're gonna come back to this shopping cart model that I showed you earlier, and this one is actually much more well defined. So as I said, this is from the book. So one thing we can do here as well is we can actually attach screenshots, and we can see, well, what does that actually look like from a user experience point of view? Today, that's a screenshot here. I can actually import Figmas too in here, and it will show me the Figma import. We've got a Figma integration. I haven't actually showed it today, but it will pull in your Figma directly from Figma, so you don't have to repeat. And so now like what this button's going to look like, what we're talking about here. And then it hits this add item. So this one's actually well formed. We've created the similar examples from the book. So it's got item name, price, quantity, etc. for the command. So I'm adding an item with these concepts, with these fields, I should say. Sorry, and this can lead to 3 different events: cart created, item added, cart error. So the idea is that if I should open the specifications here, if I have a cart created and I add an item, when I add another item, then that item is allowed to be added. I could add more rules that say, and we'll actually do that shortly. But right now, I'm just keeping it very simple. When I add an item to a cart, then that item has been added. It's allowed to be added.
Yeah. Yeah, we would definitely split those. I mean, I prefer to be very explicit, so I try to keep things as simple. And whenever I see one command give more than one event, I definitely chain together processors or do something else. But you have this freedom to do what you need at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's different modeling techniques. Once you're in this world now, you've got a handful of different ways you can do it with pros and cons for each one. And that's actually, like, if you come to the Discord on event modeling, everybody there talks about these things, and it's really useful to absorb that information.
Yeah.
So we've got this add item. We've got a remove item. Again, we can look at that here, and it's got these bits and bobs, and then we can look at the specification. Very permissive. If I've got 2 items that are added, when I remove that item, then I expect that my 3 events should look like this.
Yeah. This is actually, I mean, the fact that you have the given when thens here, it actually addresses a question that someone had about where you put the class invariance. So first of all, class implies you're doing OO, and you're coming in at this from a developer perspective. You can't do that if you want to communicate to business, right? So you have the equivalent in here by showing the different situations, and your class invariants are really there shown by example. It's not something that's written as a statement, thou must not whatever. It says, this is what happens when you do whatever, and here's the output. It's by example always. So when you say class invariants or user stories or use cases, they are all now expressed as examples because humans think in stories, and that's why event modeling is so useful, and why people remember more of it is because it's in a story-like format. Whether you're looking at something behind me here as that given when then that we've been looking at right now, or it's the entire story behind me going left to right, that's how the specifications are done. No one wants to look at graphs that branch into 1,000 different places and 50 things are connected to each other in 100 different ways. That just does not communicate well for human beings. Human beings evolved to tell stories. Our brains, the higher level lobes in our brains, are there to tell stories and make sure that ideas stick. And that's what event modeling is really good at.
You know what's funny about that is that, like, given when then is actually the same thing. Like, it's a sequence of time. It's splitting some time for you, quantizing, whatever you're working on into a sequence of time. And that's why it works really well. And actually, it goes back to the testing, different testing frameworks. So you've got arrange, act, assert. You've got given when then. You've got setup, execute, verify,
and all these frameworks, right? And the DSLs.
So here's a little trivia for you. It's actually all it started in the 60s. A man named Hoare, unfortunately, and he had Hoare's logic, which basically says he had a formula that said PQR, which is basically given when then. Right? Yeah, and like everything we're looking at now is just a formal method of trying to verify software.
UX UI, it's like a situation, motivation, value, or something like that as well. Yeah. So you see like co-evolution of this idea because it's so effective. Anything that's effective, you'll see that it co-evolves in different circles. And
exactly that. Yeah. Exactly that. All right. So we've got the model here, and we've got the specifications. Well, now what? Let's just have a quick look at this cart, because the cart's interesting. It's data, right? Like, we actually care about data here. It's not unlike the events and commands, which are very much like just key value pairs of the parameters. This is actually like the structure of the data we want to look at. So before we show the cart, we want to make sure that it looks like the shape we want it to. So here we've got an example of what a cart might look like. It's got an ID, it's got a total price, which is basically 2 of these guys at 2020, that's 40/40, plus 30 is 70/70. And so these are the 2 items in the cart, and that's basically what we want to be calculated. So we want to make sure that if I modify the events in here, that this gets updated accordingly. And this is an example of that. So then we go into the given when then for that, and we'll have a look. And it's basically given cart created. Now, what's interesting, it's the same as before. Given a bunch of events is what you do, then cart. So you don't have a when here because it's just given the events happen, then the state should automatically be updated. And notice this nomenclature, this notation that we use here. We know we're going to get an array back. And so you just basically say, all right, here's my cart that I want. And here are the item 0, item 1 that I expect to see back based on these events. Yeah. So it's a bit like JSON path. If you've ever used JSON path, it's very similar notation to that.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I've put that into my code, that exact structure, and
Nice.
it's amazing. I mean,
And
even
we never spoke about that either. We just came up with that independently. It's pretty cool.
yeah, exactly. So we had the exact same idea. But yeah, even then, there is, what are the asserts? I mean, you're basically streamlining this to not even have like it's pseudocode. Like you're not
Exactly.
even,
Exactly.
I still have to swim in, whatever I'm working in Node.js. I still have to swim in JavaScript to do this. But here, obviously, there's ways to, to move from that. So
Exactly.
all this awesome stuff you're doing, I'm going to be doing as well, which is great.
Fantastic. So there's so much more to do here. Like these could be the events. You can click on this, go back to the event, and so on. Like there's so much more we're going to do in this space. All right. So now the fun stuff. All right. I'm sorry for everyone in Europe that's right now watching this at 10 and 11 p.m. Because it's super bright. So I've got something for you now. I'm going to take it into dev mode. You ready? Okay, here's dev mode. Right, we didn't get time to finish the script into dev mode, but we do have a version coming where it's actually completely dark as well.
Oh, look how well it goes with my background now.
There you go. That's it. Now we're getting closer. All right. So
people in bed are like, what's with the white?
so it's a bit better. It's not quite better. I mean, if I zoom out like this, it's better for you.
Oh yeah.
But
this is hitting them. Put that away. It's too bright.
No event models. All right, so we got the dev mode up and running, and now we've got some extra functionality. All right, so the main one here is code. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click this scaffold button. All right, let's see what happens when I click that. So we end up with this cleaning, and it's starting to generate stuff. And as it's generating, you'll see that now it's actually building this model. Like no code, I mean, it's coding, but I don't have to code, right? Like the model is being built. And let me show you what's actually being built. Like if I go into this event model itself, we can see here, we've got a language that converts the visual model that you see here into a specific output. So for event modeling, we care about slices. For something else, you might care about something else. So this is all configurable, highly configurable. As a model automation platform, we allow you to configure how you transfer the visuals that you see here into something that you can actually commit into Git. And so what does that look like here? If we look at slice 0, like that command that we're just looking at, if I open up the parameters for that command, you see it's got this cart item, etc.
Yeah, where do you store the event? Where's the code for actually writing the event?
Check it out. Here's the payload. Like there's the event. It's in a directory. There's the event right here, and there's a payload for it. The same thing that we entered in the model is basically entered right here.
Nice.
Right, and so what the other thing that we represent in here actually are the transitions. And so if I show you here the transitions, they're just symlinks. Right, and so this here, the command going like, whoops, wrong spot. Oh, sorry, hang on. I need to go back to wherever there we go. Yep, this one. So, when you look at the model and we have an arrow going between command add item to event cart created, well, that's just a symlink, right? And so we can represent these things as symlinks in the and on the code, on the files as well. So in the Linux approach, it's everything is a file concept.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. So what this allows you to do now is when you're committing code, you can also commit the model at that point in time with that code. Like that's the value of this. So you can say, not only I know how to go, if I need to come back from here, because we store all the metadata like the pixels and XY and all of that stuff, like we store that here as well. And so if you want to commit this and then you want to go back to it for it at some point, we can allow you to do that. Right, so it becomes version controlled models, and you're not just getting like a big blob of JSON that says, okay, just store this whole thing as a blob in Git. No, you're getting it as independent, tiny fragments of files that end up making the model in totality.
Yeah, it's quite powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I was even playing around with having properties as individual files and the events themselves being directories. But
yeah,
anyway,
that was It took a while to get to that point. We're trying to store everything as a file, and then we realized actually it's a directory, and inside it now we can have all sorts of stuff. So that was the unlock, and then also the assets like this image over here, like that upload right there, that's also stored. So you can actually get your entire model. We don't want to lock you in to just basically being in here. We want to be able to give you your files back. So that's part one of what was generated. But part two of what was generated is actually the app itself. So if I show you here what we've got, we have a library where we've got a framework. This is an event sourcing framework. I wrote it. It's called the Domain Development Kit. You can write your own, or you can use this one. We have an event store. I'm happy to use an in-memory event store or or current, or you can use you can insert whatever one you like over here. We're big fans of current. And then if you have here you have a runtime. I chose GraphQL because I love GraphQL. If you've heard me talk on the Discord, you'll know how much I love GraphQL. But again, you don't have to. We can use a REST API. We can use SOAP. We can use whichever you like. This is just a transport layer. It really doesn't matter. And so now we get into the actual application itself. So I won't go into these. They're just boilerplate stuff. But here's where it gets interesting. When I look at slice 0, what I've got here is, first of all, the command. So if I go open the add item, which is where I don't see it for some reason. There it is. So there's my input for the add item. And there is my command handler. Now, what I didn't show you is when I click on here, and I click on this add item and I open it up, I can go to the schema and notice how I have different strategies. So I might say, when you do this, and this is me giving hints now to the tech, because I might want this to be load or new it up if it doesn't exist, which is actually what I want here. But for remove item, what I want it to do is let's get this up and running. Sorry, let's go to a quick reload. What I do want to do for the remove over here is I want to load or error, because I can't remove an item that doesn't exist. So I want it to load it up. If it doesn't exist, that's an error. So let's see what that looks like in the code when I look at it there. I'll go to source and see what the code generated. So here's my event. It's a class, first of all, cart created, and it just generated my class for me, which takes a cart ID. I've got an item added event, which basically shows the different fields that this particular item added event takes. And then I look at the handler, and this one here, as we said, it loads it, and if it doesn't exist, then it news it up. And then likewise for slice 1, I chose a different approach here. So if I go and look at the handler for that guy, well, this one's going to try and get it from the repository, and if it doesn't exist, it's going to return an error. All right, so this is how we can give hints to the code from the model to say, all right, I want you to model this, and when it gets to the code, these are hints. And that's really what we like. If you're going to make your models deployable, you do need a layer of code, right? Like, so it's great to have this collaboration and keep it clean, like just have it with the business folks and so on. But then when you want to get into like, let me deploy this, and we go into dev mode, well, now we're going to have to make these choices. And there's so many more choices to make. Like, do we want this to be scalable to millions of users? Is this going to go on its own read model in a database? Or is this just going to be in memory? Are we going to store this in file? Like, there's so many design decisions, architectural, technical decisions that you want to take. And that's where we would do it as an extra layer.
Yeah, we add that already on the left-hand side of swim lanes for different services. So we do have like annotations in an event model. Because this is quite important. If you don't do this, people stop using it. So you need an event model to be as used by as many people every day for everything. So, and as long as it stays out of the way like it's doing right now, so that the business people can still understand and see what's going on, that's good. It's not at the expense of someone other than a developer or vice versa. And so it has to be a blueprint where everyone goes to it to get what they need. And that's it. The minute you have like, oh, I have this in Jira, oh, I have this in this other thing, and I have this in this other thing, that's when, like a wiki, that's where information goes to die, right? You have this page that no one looks at, another page that no one looks at because they're too specific. An event model is really a blueprint that everyone goes to, like on a building site. There's a blueprint on a table that's rolled out, and the carpenters and the plumbers and the foremen and whoever else, they're all going to that blueprint to make sure that they're all lock in step, building the same house, not stepping on each other's toes. The clarity has to be as best as it can. And so when you have these extra pieces for saying like, this is where the scale, like I usually express those, by having some red arrows on a timeline saying that this is within 2 seconds. The response time should be no more than 2 seconds. Right. Yeah. The effect of that would be, someone might say, okay, this has to not be GraphQL. This has to be something else in this particular service. But they'll make that note on the very left-hand side of the whole swim lane for that service. And so, again, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that no matter what you're trying to achieve in terms of design, implementation, or maintenance, is that you're going to the same thing. You don't have your own stash of documents somewhere that are slowly falling out of sync with what everyone else is thinking. So an event model must be a blueprint that is used by as many people at the same time, because that's where you get the transparency, collaboration, and everything else that's good about working on systems together.
Yeah, I love it. And you just gave me a great idea there. Like we should be able to click on one of these lines and say like response time. I really like that idea
Well,
actually. So
I mean,
what probably is that?
don't litter it with extra features, and it can be a simple
Yeah.
annotation, but
Yeah.
it's there's many others. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
whole security aspect of it when you
Indeed.
actually have to audit this for like what information is going to what service. Is it encrypted? Is it something where we can purge it easily, which is a big question. For example, if you're doing, adopting event stores like Current or formerly Event Store DB and other things, like, well, what happens when you have an additive only system? What are the workflows for getting rid of someone's information because of right to be forgotten or GDPR and all these other laws that are out there for protecting, and they're there for a good reason. And if a company goes belly up and you find someone's information on an old backup, that's not good. So you need to have these things, and you can express them in an event model, where these things go to die if they need to. So anyway,
this is what it's about. Yeah,
you need to have a blueprint for how your system works, right? Everyone needs to. If you have an opportunity for them to not go somewhere else, do that. Bring it in here. Have it in here. Is it at the expense of clarity? Then maybe don't. But you need to ask yourself that question.
And that's where
amazing how much we can put on this.
And that's where I was saying, like, we need this. I like to think of event models as the collaboration side, but we want these extra layers on there. So we should be able to go in dev mode and just view all these different layers, deployment boundaries, which service it's going to, like all these extra things. Then, like you mentioned.
Oh, I mean, even I have like a layer on here. Like, this is totally what you could do, but I have like this, code like just popped up behind me, right? I can turn it off and on. There's like, how did you implement that processor? Well, just turn on that layer.
Yeah,
there's the code that's running to do that, right? You should be able to do that. So, and awesome. One of the reasons that, well, if you're doing event sourcing and event modeling together, the best part is that while we do have testing, and that's great, the regression tests for state changes aren't that important because once you're done one of these slices, these vertical slices, they rarely change. So what value are you getting out of running the unit test over and over and over again?
Yeah, that's right.
It's it's open close principle at its best. Where
it's better to drive it.
Touching that code, it's mathematically correct. There's no reason for you to maintain it. Like you should replace that whole slice if you're going to do something different. But we rarely swim in old code. So I show these code snippets with absolutely no second thoughts, because I know that it'll still keep working. That step in that process still works the same way. So I'm quite happy that there is no maintenance for me to go and update this code ever. It works. Right. And if I ever have to change it, I'm dumping that whole slice and I'm putting in new code. So does this help a developer? Probably. Do I have to maintain it? Is it something else that's weighing heavy on my shoulders as I go forward? No, it isn't. It's just
I can just take this slice right here and I can dump all this code that exists and I can just replace it with a new one. Like that's basically the blast radius is just this much, which really isn't very much.
Exactly. So those vertical things behind me, and of course in the diagrams here, the vertical slices are really these isolation things that give you that autonomy, that make development really fun because you're not walking on eggshells, worrying about how one thing you're coding is going to topple over someone else's work that's down the path somewhere else, right? You have this collaborative environment where like you can see the connections. We call this information completeness. You can see, what touches what the dependencies are. And so then you have full courage. Like they want to talk about courage in Agile. I haven't seen better courage than this. I'm happy
let's have a look at
that slice, and as long as it works, it's great. I can have ugly code in there. I can have my crazy formatting. I hate white space, for example. So my slices will be all compact, one-liners that people are going to barf over, but I don't care because it works. And then you don't have to look at my ugly code to get your side working.
Speaking of courage, let's talk about how we're going to get this straight to production.
Yeah.
All right. So,
all right. Awesome.
Okay. So we've got the slice right there. Now notice what I've also got in here is a specification. So that given when then that we wrote earlier, well, that's actually being converted into a test, a real test. A given when then saying this is running at decide because you got the decide or evolve. So if I show you the one that's for the viewing the items, that's actually evolving state. So saying given a bunch of state. I actually like to say a when I actually execute it because I like to have query parameters that I can pass in for the specific thing. But that's just a stylistic thing. You don't have to. But then what we're saying here is like given these events have happened, then expect the state to look like this. And here's the magic now. So if I look at the aggregate, and let's see how the aggregate was defined in the first place. Notice this.
No, aggregate is kind of like an entity from object-oriented stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So if I go over here and you can see this cart aggregate. Now I can add more. I can add like more lanes down here, and I can have a different aggregate where different events go to different places. Right? But we're just demonstrating one today. So what that tells us is that all of these events are being emitted by the same entity. Okay, and so now if I go and look at that entity, you can call it aggregate. You can have a decider pattern if you so choose. You don't have to use an aggregate here. You can absolutely use a decider. And so if I open this up now, and it becomes shared across the slices, right? Like all of these slices, like, or at least the add and remove, the specifications that exist within here, they want to make sure that the same aggregate that emits these events can adhere to all of these specifications. And so now, mathematically, we can create the specs because we have this information from the model. Mathematically, we can create what the command looks like because we have this information from the model. We've created all this information already. We've captured it. But what we haven't captured is the coding logic, right? So what we can do is we can create a scaffold, a skeleton of what the aggregate should look like. Like over here, you can see we know we need an add item. We know we need to apply cart created, item added, etc. But we don't know exactly what the implementation is going to look like. So we create implementation instructions just basically as a template approach. And that is useful for a human or an AI. But I'll bet you if you put an AI next to a human in a race, the AI is going to develop this a hell of a lot faster.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? And
well,
so
with the right guardrails, it's also
with the right
gonna
guardrails,
not make
precisely.
mistakes. Yeah.
And those right guardrails are going to be these tests. All right, so let's see that. Let's actually see it in action, right? You guys ready? This is now the superhuman AI that I was talking about being able to implement code. So I'm going to just open this aggregate right here. And I'm going to go and say implement with AI. So I'll click it. And now our artificial intelligence overlords are thinking, brewing ideas, doing a bunch of things over here. And so what's happening is it's basically looking at looking at everything in here, looking at the specifications, looking at the aggregate, and looking at how it's going to implement the code. So here we go. It got a couple of updates, and the tests are actually failing. So let me just quickly look at that. I don't know why I did not play this. Let me give it a quick reload. Open it up. Nothing like a live demo, but this should be working. This will be working.
We wouldn't believe you if it worked the first time.
I know, it's just really strange.
Live demo.
Here we go.
Well,
I mean, so
I'll answer a question while you're doing that.
So
Elliot says that what's the processor's layer for? The processor is really that another form of a user. It's basically a robot doing something for you. So if you look at the diagram behind me, there's a little gear. That's someone actually instead of someone doing that, that's the computer doing it. So in event modeling, we really show automation as really a robot doing something that a human would, because you can pretty much replace all automations with a screen that an actual user behind a computer would do manually, and that's the kind of so there's a processor's lane. That's where Sam is putting all those gears for, like, okay, this doesn't require someone to go and click something on a screen. That's where there's a processor that picks up from a to-do list. We mentioned this earlier. A to-do list picks up, shows what has to be done, and the processor does those things and sends commands, and those result in events, and it's exactly the same outcome as if someone was using a screen and pressing a button. Does that make sense, Elias? So anyway,
yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you for answering.
Hey, look at that!
So,
it looks beautiful.
So there we go. We had a bunch of failed tests first. It couldn't, like this test here, the viewing items wasn't working. It had another think about it, and now we've got all the tests passing. And so if I go look at the implementation, well, I've got my cart aggregate has now been implemented, right?
Yeah.
And if I look at, I can view it. I can see what it did. It's just basically saying if the cart isn't created, create the new cart. If it hallucinated actually, but that's fine. It's not going to affect things because the test still actually passed. Mm-hmm. And then over here, the same with the state. Like what it's doing is it's actually iterating over the events, and it's basically pushing them in to a model so that then they can be returned. All right. So now what I can do is I can basically take this and I can deploy it. I'm just going to click this deploy button, and it's building it. And now what you'll see is we don't just have a build, but we should shortly in here get once it's done, dist. Right, so these are the files that are about to go get pushed over to Lambda. Now you can push them into a container if you want. We allow you to do that. Mm-hmm. We don't discriminate. Like you want to go to the AWS, you want to go to Kubernetes, you want to push it straight to a Beanstalk. Like it's up to you. And it's just basically taking the code, it's building it because now it's passing.
We're very anti-cloud these days.
Yeah,
we're after DHH. The Ruby on Rails community has thrown the cloud to the trash, and
you can deploy it in your closet if you really would like to. That's completely up to you. And so
the comedic relief.
So now it's actually deploying it. It's hopefully going to give us in a second the final URL where it deploys it to. If it doesn't, I can just trigger it again. But basically, this takes it into the GraphQL endpoint that I showed you earlier. So over here, we're going to be deploying to the exact same one. Sometimes it times out, so that's basically what's happening. I can just give it another try. Oh, wrong button. My bad. It's going to implement it again right now. So while it's doing that, I mean, I can go and show you on the Apollo server right here. So if I go over here and I click on the cart view, there we go. We can see it. I showed it to you earlier. I can add carts to it, but I'm going to keep adding items 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's see. Actually, it hasn't deployed the latest one yet, so give me a second. We're just now the tests are passing. I'm going to do one more deployment. So give it a second. Creating Lambda layer. Nothing like hitting timeouts. It is 2 p.m., so the whole of the US is alive. There we go. So now it works. So your deployment's complete. Your API is live over here. So I can click on that and I can go to it. So click it. Right, it's going to take a second, and there we go. So now if I view the data that's in here, oh, it's got an unknown type. GraphQL validation. Okay, well, I can look at that in a second. What I'm going to do is just let it deploy one more time. If I go back to the code, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change. So ignore that deployment for the time being. Trust me, it worked before. I'm going to remove this simpler, just given when then scenario right there. And instead, I'm going to replace it with a more complex one. So here's one I made earlier. All right. And in this one, it's got, if I just get rid of those up here, it's got the cart created.
So those are associated, right, with those boxes. So they travel with them. You can move them around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Like this is the specifications belong to this guy. I can move it somewhere else. I can take it anywhere. And these, yeah, exactly that. And so now this one's more complex, right? This is going to say, okay, it's going to have a happy path where it just adds items, but it's also going to say no items with the same name. And it's also going to say no more than 3 items at any given point.
So one point about the hallucinations is that with event modeling, you actually control the scope of what's there. So the hallucinations don't actually grow with the size of the project. You will always have a way to cut off complexity with a processor, a summary event, or whatever, so that you create the problem and solution space scope for what you're doing. And so we see very, very little hallucinations in this compared to anything else. If you're doing another like Snake game or some 3D driving simulator in the browser that you see out there on YouTube, yeah, that's going to completely collapse on itself when you try to do that. The amount of tokens you're using up, the context window size, you're just destroying that. Here, what you have with the given when then, with the example data, is finite. There's no better way to leverage AI than with having a proper event model and hopefully an event sourced backend or implementation, because event modeling actually works for traditional systems where it'll show you the crazy amount of coupling. And yeah, maybe in that case, you will get a ton of hallucinations, because even if you have an event model, it's showing you that almost everything's connected to almost everything, which is horrible. And then, yeah, you will totally topple over on hallucinations. But with an event modeling system, with a event sourcing system that has an event model to navigate and understand the scope, you're never going to be at the whim of this level of hallucination, because you're in full control of the level of scope you're passing in.
Exactly. So guys, just jumping in with a quick time check. So we're just coming up to the top of the hour. Have you got more sections to show, Sam?
No, so this is the last thing I wanted to show, the iteration. For some reason, when I double clicked the deployment there, it like messed up the deployment twice in a row. So I'm just rebuilding it from
Sorry, scratch. I got too excited. I didn't even notice the time passing.
That's okay. So the AI is just having a couple more iterations here. You can actually see it, like it's trying again and then it's failing, and it's basically doing BDD. Like it's got the behavior. It's getting attempt 2 out of 5 to fix the issues. It'll keep trying to do it up to the number of attempts we give it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen it fail yet. Actually, past 3, 4.
I've made
maximum.
it fail, and I think a lot of times what happens is that it actually exposes bad requirements.
Exactly.
So I've made impossible given when-thens, and
precisely.
Every time I've reran it was whack-a-mole bug exemplified, right? I could see that there is no way for these requirements to be satisfied. Obviously, there's going to be better analysis tools that are going to be probably based in AI that are going to walk the dependency tree or the chain of information flow to basically say this is impossible, right?
Exactly.
We
And
already
that,
had this attempts at this maybe 15 years ago through Microsoft Research, where they were doing a lot of this analysis from the contract-based theorems or something like that.
yeah, the like contract testing, and then there's also like the property-based testing and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
you
things
can
like
use there
that.
to
But I mean, if you're doing that, it's going to be way too much for people that are trying to express themselves to get under. But we will get parts of this expressed to as the AI engines express, give us better agents. That's kind of what we'll be able to plug into very, very fast.
Yeah. So honestly, I think there's something going on just with the deployment. You can see the application built. So I really wanted to show you like the actual deployment with the new complex rules, but at the very least, I'll show you that it actually implemented them. The only difficulty here is for some reason it's not deploying to Lambda. It's just taking a bit more time than usual. That happens midday on Pacific time because the whole of them, like we need to put the retries in. But let me just show you.
DHH was right.
He's right. He's actually right. Exactly. He's not wrong. I mean, if I was deploying this locally, it would be no problem. I can actually run it locally right now.
And he just buys the hardware, honestly, and he's saving like $10 million a year.
I mean, that's fantastic.
That pays, a couple of sysadmins to do a better job. So
if we go to this aggregate right here, you can see basically it's saying the new rules that we implemented, and they're saying, hey, if the item names already is contained, cannot have two items with the same name, which was one rule I put in, and then the other one was cannot have two, over 3 items in there, and so it's saying too many items in the car, and so it's implemented it completely correctly as per this specification, which was updated now to have the adding items, no items with the same name, as well as no more than 3 items. And then the same thing for the state resolver here. It's basically taking in or handling all those events. And so this is basically the process. Like we can go and modify the model to our heart's content, right? We'll just go over here. And it's like an IDE, but you don't have to write any code. You just have to model correctly, write the right specifications, and then deploy your model. And that's how
it's the right way of expressing what you want. And now we have that missing piece of not being too tedious for people to do because we have the boring parts automated, right? So it's perfect. Like this is the sweet spot.
Now, you did see it. You did see it earlier. You did see it earlier being deployed, so I'm not full of shit. Like it does work. It's just for some reason, it's got some time out here.
So this is a big deal for me. I mean, at that point, like the nice thing about event source solutions, that it's additive only. The blue-green stuff, you always have the consumers of an event being updated first, and then actually the producers get updated next. So all this deployment stuff is absolutely not a big deal for me. Yeah. Same with like schema migrations and all of these things that just destroy regular development. I've been at places where you can't even upgrade a client to the next version. It's faster to backport features to the version they're on. That's a nightmare I never ever wanted to be part of ever again. And it's the only reason that I see event sourcing as the default approach to automating information systems, because it simply doesn't suffer these absolutely deadly dysfunctions of high coupling and all this other stuff.
Awesome. So I know I just want to be really conscious of time. I do want to say that, first of all, thank you very much for everybody that watched this and made the time in their day to come and look at it. I just want to make one request. We are looking for design partners. Like design partners means you're doing event sourcing in production today. You want to put this stuff on auto. You want to accelerate your development cycle. If it's taking you right now weeks or days, and you want it to take hours, then come talk to us. Like we've got a form that Chris is going to share shortly, but that's really what's going to benefit us the most right now is just getting that super fast feedback cycle. Fast feedback means we learn quickly, means we develop quickly. So we're looking for people that do that. I want to also say just a huge thank you, an incredible amount of work that went the last 10 days, especially from the team at Auto that made all of this happen. I'm sitting here, I'm the face of it, putting it all to show, but like honestly, the guys that built this, thank you so much. You've just done a freaking incredible job. Chris, back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just dropping some of those links into the chat for you now. I think most questions have been answered as we go. Yes, there will be a replay of the video. I'll put those out on LinkedIn for you. And also I'll take a note to send you the link directly. There was a question about...
Well, I'd like to first thank you guys for all the work, because it's been a tough slog to do it without all the automation tools that most other disciplines have. So I personally thank you so much for pouring in not just your own efforts, but your belief in this approach, that it is the future of being accountable for how information is stored, managing things responsibly, things that others are not willing to do. And you are. And so I think you are on your way to greatness because you took the time to do the hard things, to convince the people that were unconvincible, and move the whole thing forward. So I really appreciate the time, effort, money, devotion of being able to put a whole business behind it, pivot your business to a better way of working, and all those things. Their open-mindedness about my feedback, others' feedback. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. This is incredible. I'm excited for the next weeks and months, what's going to happen. So thanks so much.
Absolutely, thank you for all the insights and all the part and the help that you're doing here with us as well. Andy, I see you've been frantically answering everybody, so thank you for that.
So.
It does take a village.
You're part
it does.
of it.
That's right. Okay, so if anyone would like to drop off, please feel free. But I figured we could open it up for anyone that wants to stay and ask any questions. I'm more than happy to stay behind and answer, Chris, unless there's anything else you want to cover.
It looks like we've got one unanswered question from Elias, who says, can you run this tool as an app on top of Azure Europe Sovereign Cloud?
The app itself, like our app? No, our app runs independently. And there's a squirrel out there watching me. Look at that guy.
Nice.
So the app itself is it's our app, like that's where we make money, but what you can deploy to is anywhere, actually. Yes, so the target language you can deploy anywhere. One thing I didn't mention is that model automation is what we do, and we have a model automation protocol. So today the model automation protocol I showed you is an event modeling with TypeScript AWS protocol. We can make any protocol. We can make a event modeling, Azure deploying to the Current or Axonic or whatever you want, whatever your target language is. So we're going to be publishing a lot more about model automation protocol and how to make that work.
And if you're a fan of like functional programming and you're into F# or Clojure or whatever, this is your bread and butter. This thing lives and breathes pure functions and immutable stores. So you're going to love it.
And yes, there will be recording for everybody. Yes, I know everybody has been asking about that. And sorry, we will make a better effort next time, I promise. Adam and I always meet at this hour, and we thought, hey, let's just meet. We had no expectation it's going to be like this amazing. So next time we'll do a better job. There was one question I saw earlier about information completeness check. Yes, that's absolutely coming. We will add that in there in a very nice way. Think of like how you get linting done in your IDE. Now think of this model with linting all over it and showing you a bunch of stuff. So there's so much more we're going to cover. Just stay tuned. Like, we're only getting started.
That's a very common question too, because I know with walking up, thinking of people that did a lot of hard work, working with the Miro API is a nightmare. I've done it. And so shout out to Martin for doing that. He's been able to do information completeness check within Miro.
That's crazy.
It's really tough to do unless you own the tool yourself. And this is that opportunity to do it right. So yeah, that's right. I certainly know that you'll see that feature very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. It's called a map. Like you create a model automation protocol, and then you can map the model to whatever you want. Chris, I'll open it back to you.
I think that's it. We'll just see if there's any more final questions. Otherwise, we'll let everyone jump off, and I'll be sure to follow up with the links to recordings on LinkedIn and also on X. You can find us on X at @BeOnAuto, and also that's our address on LinkedIn and on YouTube as well. So if you want to find us on social, at @BeOnAuto, that would be where you can find replays on this session on any of those channels.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Adam. Thank you as well. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'm looking forward to more of these. I really want to get the thing that's behind me onto your platform, and I'm playing around with the same concepts, just in an open source way. So it would be nice to have a commercial grade tool that companies can afford and put into their tech stack to use to have the proper commercial support, etc. But everyone else, the grassroots movement, can always play with the open source stuff that I do out there, playing around with these concepts every day. And then you can see them rise up through mature products like this, and then you get the proper support to actually do it for your daily job, which I think is a wonderful combination. And then, of course, all the parts that you have exposed as open source, that's just going to bridge those two worlds so wonderfully. So thanks.
Absolutely. All
right.
right.
There's one more question just come in there from Lars.
Does it have some sort of expand and contract and versioning of APIs for handling upgrades of endpoints where you have external users that might take months to upgrade their code? So, Adam, I'm going to do a quick my thoughts on that, and then you can share yours. So I think the model, in terms of the model itself, versioning it, as I mentioned, we can convert that into Git. So when you deploy an endpoint, you also deploy the model that went with it. So from a from a mechanics point of view, you can version control it. And then if you want to have a version that when you deploy to with your API, absolutely you can do that. As for external users that might take months to upgrade their code, and so that's, for you to kind of deploy multiple versions, it actually lends itself really well to do that. Because it's based on events, you can easily host multiple versions of the data that somebody else requires. It takes some planning to do. You got to figure out like what your state looks like for those people. But once you figure out, this is my version A and this is the state, now I'm going to create a new version B of that state. And if your events are changing, you can update your older ones to stay backwards compatible as well. But these are all things that you can do in the different models.
Yeah, it's much harder with a traditional model because it's at the core is doing event sourcing. Migrations and supporting multiple versions is a lot clearer than you would have with trying to stand up two separate schemas for different versions. That I know goes sideways very, very quickly. And as you're talking about different clients that being on different versions and multi-tenancy and other things that can add even more complexity, I wouldn't attempt it without event sourcing. I don't want to go back to that world at all.
Both. All
right, and with that, I think we're done. So thanks very much, everyone. We'll sign off now, and please get in touch. On.auto, fill in the form to request access, and then we'll be in touch and start onboarding you all as soon as we can. Take care.
All right, and thanks, guys. I'm gonna jump in and work on my crappy code because I'm ashamed of what I'm doing. So I gotta fix some things. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. It's a fun project. I'm gonna be live streaming later, so if you catch me on there, you can ask me something you forgot. But then again, Sam is on our Discord too, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.